Thanks everybody for being here. Just want to go around really quick since there's quite a few of us that don't know each other. Just say who you are and however you want to situate yourself to Tango and to this conversation. I'm Megan. I run Oxygen Tango with Dave. And yeah, one of our primary purposes is just making these conversations normal and less stressful and just a normal part of how we do business in Tango, and also figure out what we need to be doing to make Tango a better space. Thanks.
I can go next, I guess.
Right.
Hi, I'm Nicole Hill. I am not part of the Los Angeles tango scene, but I lived in LA in early 2000s, late 1999. But I danced tango in a bunch of different cities, and I'm not the most active tango dancer these days, but I do spend a lot of time thinking and talking about dance and dance communities. And so just happy to be here, and also very happy that there is this Oxygen Tango thing that Megan just talked about, because that's sort of the dream that I would have had when I was a more active dancer, for people to talk about community and inclusion.
Thanks, Nicole.
Hey guys, I am Lauren Woods, and I am very happy to be here with all of you to discuss just everything that is being exposed right now and what we can do as a community to make it better, even if the topics start to stray away from Black Lives Matter, as long as I feel the topics are most importantly about making our community safer. I think it's very valid in this particular chat.
Well, hi. My name is Ron Parker. I am a producer of the History of Black Dance in America, director of the Central Avenue Dance Ensemble. I have been dancing in the LA dance community, a variety of dance styles, for over 20 years, and dancing in the LA tango community for over 15 years.
Right.
So I'm Stephanie. I am the baby here as far as the tango goes. I'm honored to be in such a great company, but I'm been in the Oxygen community, in the LA dance community for coming up on just under 2 years. And I'm happy to be a part of this conversation. I think it's important, it's relevant, and I'm happy to see everyone here and, you know, ready to discuss without fear or judgment, and just feeling that it's a safe place to have an open conversation.
And my name is Johnny. I was born and raised in LA, and I started doing tango. I learned tango from the Oxygen Tango community. So I've been here for, it's almost 9 years now, and I've taught some classes there. I used to teach classes there, and that's where I am.
Patricia, 6-year-old according to Tango, and 5 years old living in Los Angeles. And before I lived in Amsterdam, that's where I'm from. Shocked by my own unawareness of what the blackness in tango, the racism in tango, racism by itself, and learning a lot. And thank you, Dave and Megan, for making this, helping to learn. Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Dave. I've been in the Oxygen community as a member, as an organizer, for about, in different capacities, I guess since the beginning, about 10 years now. I would agree with Megan. A big goal for me in all of the conversations we're having is just that we have them, that we kind of move through the discomfort of having them. And that's why we're really committed to not just having one of them, doing this over a sustained period of time. And so we're actually on our third discussion right now. I'm just going to kind of quickly remind us where we are in that structure and then just open it up. The first one was really pretty much, it felt like right sort of during the beginning of the protests. And so there was a lot of just kind of processing that and how do we even talk about this, and pretty general. Since then, we've been focusing a little bit more on the Tango community. So last week we did Blackness in Tango, the past, talked a lot about, you can watch it, talked a lot about just the origins of Tango, the history, and also how a lot of that history is erased and why we don't talk about it anymore. Today we're doing the present. And I think the next time probably we'll do the future. So I am kind of keeping that in mind. I see the future as sort of, more solution oriented, I'm sure solutions will come up here. We certainly want them to come up. But I also want to make sure that we do focus on what we're dealing with and try to see clearly and use this time to see clearly what it is we're dealing with. Maybe see if we can reach some consensus about it. And yeah, just talk about what is the situation now today. So maybe we'll just start by opening up to anyone that feels like jumping in.
Also, the other Nicole's on the phone if she wants to introduce herself.
Nicole's been participating the past couple weeks. She opted to be a listener.
Oh, okay.
So that's all right.
She might jump in at any time.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure we weren't excluding anyone.
Thank you. We have some questions and topics that we can pose out, but we also just want to sit for a second and see if anybody's called to speak about something in particular. But before we do that.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't see last week, so maybe if you guys catch me up in 10 seconds, that would be great. Because I have no idea what went down last week. So.
It's no worries. I don't think you had to have seen last week to participate this week, particularly since we just want to take like a look at present day LA Tango, which you know a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe as I am the only person, I've danced a lot in LA, but never tango. Just curious on all of your takes and experiences, maybe a little bit, so I can get a better sense of the community.
Mm-mm.
A loaded question. And not necessarily something that's bad. Like you can tell me something amazing about the community. What keeps you dancing? You know.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I have felt very welcomed in the community. I mean, there's a lot of experiences and a lot of things, and just by being who I am, or whatever. But I think in spite of all that, I have never been really openly made to feel uncomfortable. I've mentioned to you before we started, Nicole, about some things that you said in your discussion, I guess it was last week or the week before, that resonated with me. And those things were true, but even in spite of that, I think that my experiences overall have been positive. Nothing that makes me say, oh, this is a horrible thing and I don't want to come back. But sort of tracing back to part of the discussion that we had last week about the history of tango, I also came into it understanding a little bit of the history. And I think that sort of, I can't really say it colored my impression, but I was probably already braced for a certain idea. But I think overall my experiences have been positive.
Could you just elaborate a little bit on that? The idea that you were braced for? I'm just.
Just understanding the history of tango, the history of Argentina, how, the origins of the dance, the origins of the music, and the contributing factors around it. As we discussed last week, a little bit about the history of Argentina and the contributions of the slaves and African music and dance into the origins of tango. So I had an understanding of that. I had a little bit of an understanding of the history of Argentina and its, experiences with the slave trade and with the slave population in the later years. So I think I might have been a little guarded with that in mind, but I'd have to say that, and maybe for me, it's because I wasn't, at Oxygen was my experience, and I always felt welcomed by it. But I also know that for a lot of people, when they look at tango, especially in certain communities, it seems like a very highbrow thing. And why would you want to do that? Or, what's the appeal? The music's so different and the dance is so different. But I think even in spite of all those things, it's still been, for me, overall, a positive experience. I've met some really amazing people, and I think if there was any reason why people didn't want to dance with me, it was probably not because of the color of my skin. But I will say that is something that always plays in the back of your mind. But, it hasn't been an overriding factor for me, fortunately.
Well, I'd like to say that I love the Argentine tango. I love the music. I love the dance style. I like to dance a more traditional style myself. I think I'm fortunate to live in LA. We have a very large and very diverse tango community. And by diverse, I mean we have a lot of different people from different places, different countries, different ideologies. And, we're all coming together to dance this dance. And it's a beautiful thing because, if if things aren't working out for you at one location, there's always another, and then another, and then another. If this person doesn't want to dance with you, you know what? I found that there are 5, 6, 7 other people who do want to dance with you. So from that standpoint, I think I and all of us are really lucky, to be here and in this community. And I do hope we get back to dancing soon.
I have a question. Do you feel that this inclusion is also to do with the city? Because, when I lived in Los Angeles many years ago, like that's where I started social dance. It was salsa, and it was very, very welcoming. So I didn't actually go into tango with sort of this apprehension, nor did it seem foreign to me because I was like this kid who loved jazz and things like that. And for me, I immediately connected with the music. Before there was tango music on Spotify, before Shazam could recognize a tango song, I was there running and annoying the DJ trying to get the song off of the computer. So it wasn't a foreign thing to me, but I do wonder how much the actual environment in the city that you're in kind of shapes what the community is like. Because for me, my memories of LA, even when I was younger, was all about music and dancing. And there was a lot of diversity that I think I've always longed for in every environment that I'm in.
I agree with Ron. I feel fortunate to be in LA because it is such a melting pot and living in urban LA. And so I think for that reason, my impression is that makes it easier because we do have such a diverse community. And honestly, I am one of those people who enjoys the music. I've always been fascinated by the dance. I did have experiences like you with other dances and dancing salsa. And that was also that I didn't feel different or outside in that experience. But I think that the fact that we are in LA and it is such a diverse community is part of what appealed to me, because I could go to tango, I can go to a milonga, I can go to a class, and I can meet a whole variety, a real representation of this city. just in one place. And that for me was appealing. I mean, not just the city, but people from all over the world. That was something that really that does appeal to me. And I feel fortunate for that. And I miss it. So, yeah.
Hey guys. So this is beautiful share, and I resonate exactly a lot of the things that you guys are saying. And I know, Nicole, you kind of had like a question. But so I do kind of want to get to the nitty gritty. And before we do that, I feel like, Megan, I would like if I know that you always take notes before this class, and I would love to open that door for you to talk about these subjects that I think are weighing on us. We've been quarantined for a while. We obviously miss our dance and we want to get back to our dance soon. I would love to see what we're coming back to.
Yeah, it's something that Dave and I are talking about a lot. It's pretty clear to us that we want to change the way we think about Oxygen programming, and particularly to start thinking about how to include more people and who gets to do tango and who feels comfortable in a tango space. We're right at the beginning of that. These past 2 weeks have been for us learning, listening, talking through the way that we think and feel about this, and getting a feel for what the problem is and what exactly it is that we're solving. What has become clear to me is that tango has a reputation for being elite, snobby, prejudiced. Yeah, and I'm not okay with that. I think that we do some things at Oxygen to help with that, but I don't think we do enough. And I certainly haven't thought about it in terms of specific demographics and specific access for, for minority groups, for non-white people, for differently abled people, for people who don't identify on a gender binary. We have not been specific about that. And I think that that's what's going to change for us, is that the things that we talk about between us, our beliefs and our values, and I think that the beliefs and the values that a lot of our community members have, writing it down, making it official, making it a part of our contracts with our teachers, but having a specific code of conduct for the standards that we're going to hold ourselves to, and starting to think about, we moved our school to Inglewood. We have a school in a Black neighborhood. Part of that reason, a big part of that reason, was because we realized all of the tango schools tend to be in white areas, or areas that are, just easier for white people to access. I liked the idea of a tango school where there wasn't one. I liked the idea of a tango school that wasn't in a predominantly white area. There's a lot of issues that go along with that. That's probably like a whole call in and of itself. But Dave and I are realizing we haven't really meaningfully engaged with getting the local Inglewood community into our tango studio, or trying to show the Inglewood community what tango looks like. And a lot of that has to do with us not being sure if that's our place to do that. We moved our school there, so we must have thought something about it. That's something that I would love to hear on this call. I think that that's where we're going to go with it next week, is starting to think about what we imagine in the future for tango, and what tango might look like if it didn't have the reputation for being elite, prejudiced, and bigoted. So I think that I'm not sure that it's strange. I don't know if this is something I need to convince people. I don't think that a lot of the people in the tango community are aware that our dance has this reputation. I really don't. And I've actually come up against a lot of pushback about that.
So Lauren and I were talking earlier this week, and I started tango in a PhD program, and the only other Black women in tango were all in PhD programs, so really privileged. and I've talked about that space. Like for me, even how I grew up middle class and have my middle class to like upper middle class at this point in my life. I worked for a tech company. You know, I've always been in that environment that's been integrated. I've always had friends of different backgrounds. And I think that's a very different space. I think these are valid questions. Like if you're courting the talented 10th of the Black community, that's one thing. But if we're really trying to be inclusive to all people, of all backgrounds, of all economics, that's a different situation. And I think with Tango too, we kind of pride ourselves on like, I'm going to take all these classes, I'm going to go to all these workshops, I'm going to buy these fancy shoes, I'm going to go travel. And I'm not going to dance with people who aren't at my level. That's a very economic form of discrimination. Let's throw out race for a second. I know as I've been thinking about inclusion, that's part of it. Like, are people of different ability levels invited? Are we not going to let people who can't afford to do everything participate, you know? Because again, for me, I think I've struggled with Tango, like we call ourselves a community. And I think we are communities in many places. It sounds like you guys have a community and you're thinking and talking about this, which is really critical. But there are other places you dance tango and it does feel more like a private club with membership levels, like, you know, local house where it's like, do I get to go in the local club or do I have enough money that I can go into the club in Amsterdam or in London? And, you know, and so tango does operate that way. And we have to, I think it's about our values. I think it's about how we think about it. And, you know, does your school perhaps offer free events or scholarships or things of that nature? I think often when you want to bring in a wider group of people, you always have to contend with the economics, and like that's part of accessibility, and that speaks to like what the value of the community is.
Well, speaking to exclusivity, I came up, well, one of the areas that I came up and danced through was the Hacienda Hotel. And it's no longer in existence, but I don't know, for maybe 30 years, it was the hub of, well, one of the major hubs of social dance in LA. And you primarily had West Coast swing dancers and hustle dancers. And later on, they eventually allowed salsa, and it became really probably the biggest salsa club in LA. But anyway, I came up through there, got to know a lot of people, and you know, I helped Leon. I forgot her name already. It's been so long, but they started a tango there called the Tango Experience, and you know, I did what I could to try to help build it up and get people to come. And one of the obstacles that I had was the impression that people, you know, who were coming to the club and they were starting to see the dance, and yes, they would see it and they would like it. Music, you know, was kind of different, but it had a whole mystique to it. But I remember talking to people who said, and some people who even took a lesson or two said, I don't want to do this dance. The people, they don't seem friendly. They never smile. They seem stuck up. And I just don't want to be around this. And these weren't Black people. These were, you know, non-Black people who've been dancing, you know, for 20 or 30 years. So I just say that to say that it's a real thing, you know. It's not something that we just make up, but it's a real thing that real people, you know, see. And I had a conversation with, I don't mean to hog it, but I had a point here. I had a conversation with Robert Lee, who you know runs the Tango Mio, and has been doing it for, you know, a couple of years. Doing a pretty good job. It's one of the largest milongas and a good one at that. And, you know, he's tried, you know, like you guys, to kind of understand what it takes to get more people involved, make people comfortable and so forth. And we had a conversation just last week. You know, he was thinking that, you know, maybe what we need to do is just start with the next generation. You know what I mean? When we bring people into tango, you know, it's like martial arts. You know, you not only learn, you know, the technique of martial arts, but you learn a philosophy behind it. You learn a way of living, of looking at reality and dealing with people. And he was saying that that's that's an idea that he had to do with Tango, you know. And I said, well, have you talked to the people at Oxygen Tango? Because that's an excellent place for something like that to happen. You have, you know, young people that come in there, they're learning this dance, and personally, I think you guys, you know, do a great job. You know, I've danced with a lot of people that come through your program, and I've always been, you know, impressed. And I always, by the way, recommend you guys, and particularly since you've been in Inglewood. I mean, you have no idea how many people, Black people, have tried to, you know, get to come down there. But the point is that you guys have an opportunity to teach people certain sensitivities. To teach, yes, it's important to be good at the dance and focus on it and listen to the music and move with the music and all of the technical things you teach. But I think you should teach also that it's important to respect other people, you know, people that you don't know, people who aren't maybe at your level, you know, to have a certain sensitivity, you know, when they see, let's say, a woman who's been sitting at a milonga, you know, and not asked to dance, you know, for an hour or two. You see what I'm saying? I mean, that's something that you can teach people coming in at the ground level. So as they progress in the dance, they're also taking this mindset of inclusivity and compassion with them into the dance world and then the belongings that they go to.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that too. That was something that came up in the conversation, Nicole, that you were a part of, that many of us watched. Yeah, just kind of building the idea that it's not a sacrifice to take an interest in how the people in the community are doing at the Milonga. You know, that can actually enrich your experience of Milonga. And I think we actually kind of spend a lot of energy helping people set boundaries at the Milonga, because that is important too. And so maybe sometimes we're shortchanging that other part of it, where you are trying to encouraging people to be more conscious of just what's going on with everybody at the Milonga, not just yourself. I do just want to quickly touch, you know, since Megan brought it up, another thing that came through to me in that conversation was just the whole question of discomfort. And there was a lot of talk about just sensing people's discomfort with race sometimes, and how that in itself can be uncomfortable. I know for myself, yeah, we moved the school to Inglewood. We have a lot of kind of ambivalence about that. Should we be there at all? Are we participating in gentrification? And then also, are we even, is it working at all? You know, are we actually making a space that Black people come into and feel like, is it a welcoming space? You know, and just the fact that we think so hard about those problems and we haven't really tried to talk to our community about it, I think is some evidence of our discomfort with it. And yeah, why is that so hard to bring up? What, you know, why do we feel like why haven't we done that? No, it's something that I'm very conscious of now.
Yeah, I just want to, I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I do want to speak to a couple of those issues that I think are important. I think I'm pretty fortunate that, like, when I think people are uncomfortable because we live in the United States and has extremely segregated education system. I was fortunate that I'm from Philadelphia. My dad's a public school teacher and was very conflicted about the fact that my sister and I went to private schools until like about high school. But they were more privileged schools, and they also were integrated at the same time. And I think fundamentally what that gave me was the comfort to have the conversation, which has led to the comfort to have the argument too. Not even in a bad place, but like, we can talk about these things, not agree. We can even get upset about it, and we can come back and still continue the conversation, hopefully in a productive way. Although I don't always master that. But the one thing it did give me was like, I'm not afraid to talk to anyone about anything really. And I always kind of believed, you know, the religion, race, politics, the stuff you're not supposed to talk about, that's the stuff that I find fascinating as an adult, not even as a kid. And so I really encourage you guys to have those uncomfortable conversations, become more comfortable over time, and they're so important. Um, and back to what Ron was saying about, I think the way you can maybe help to make some inroads are two things. So the blues community talks a lot about at events, like, here's how you say yes, here's also how you say no, and here's what you do if someone's being rude or inappropriate. Like, there's always like, come to me, come to this person, we will figure it out. So if you have at classes, at milongas, at practicas, that conversation, not just at the beginning of the event, but like when there's critical mass, then the community becomes more sensitive, I think. And everyone's on the same page about what's acceptable, what's not. I think the other piece to Ron and for what you do, I want to learn more. I know Lauren and I were talking earlier, I always had this affinity to tango and I loved older things in general. But when I found out that milonga had an African tradition, I was like, oh, that explains it, right? And particularly, Black community, even in the US, is very diverse. There are obviously Jamaican American, Nigerian American, but for me as an African American, the descendant of enslaved people, who doesn't know where I come from, I don't know my religion, I don't know my language, I very much, as an adult, latch on to African culture wherever it is. And so I would say part of connecting with the Inglewood community is helping them to also understand, like, this dance came from people like yourself, right? And when I think about some of the content, even the movie Tango Negro, when they look at the music and they say, you take away that bass, the rhythmic bass, and no tangos can be written fast, slow, or medium. Go watch it again if you haven't. I watched it right before the talk because I wanted to be a little bit more informed. But like, I'm not a musician, but even that concept, like, it could not have happened without the contribution of Black people, and we want them back in the space. I think knowing the history and just talking about inclusion. And I'm going to say one other quick thing. What really changed my perspective, I think blues taught me, hey, we need to be talking about behavior. And they're not perfect, by the way, but we need to be talking about behavior. But samba is what taught me that tango is missing this huge thing. Both of these dancers, they're about the same age. They have a lot of culture. In samba, they talk about the history. They talk about even connection to religion. They talk about what it means. And so in LA, there's a woman named Anna Laidley who just created the first, like, samba's behind tango in terms of how big the community is, but she created the first International Samba Congress. And a lot of that is conversations over what it means, what the spiritual aspects, and when you think about it, we're talking about the elitists of tango. Like, if you know anything about samba, you're probably thinking Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the biggest carnival in the world, a costume that costs $2,000 that's covered in rhinestones and feathers. So we have that fancy elitist aspect too. But the difference is, I think, the culture is very much grounded in the history. And as more and more people, often actually white wealthy people, are coming to samba, even buying their roles in carnival, there's actually a tension in the community now where we are saying that is fine, but you need to understand where this dance comes from. So I was just in Brazil. I did a tour of Rio de Janeiro of the history of samba, and it ended in an archaeological site that was recently discovered, which was a mass grave of 40,000 African people who pretty much just made it to Brazil and died immediately. And my instructor, who's this master dancer, he was like, we need to know that. This is Carnival, the parade starts tomorrow. You need to understand where this came from. And literally the site had like plexiglass. I looked down in the grave of someone who never had a proper burial. You could see their skeleton. And it was important for us to think about that in the moment. So I think tango is as rich. It's not just, of course, about Black people. There are the gauchos, there are the very different immigrant groups. And we do talk about it, but I think there's an interesting spiritual aspect that is talked about commonly when you get a group of samba dancers together. And I think tango has all that to offer. We're just not doing it, right? And so I encourage you guys, when you're creating events, to really bring in that culture, in that history. And I say this as an atheist who is often cynical about religion, but like the spiritual aspect of samba is very compelling to me. And the other thing I will say, and this speaks to my teacher in Chicago, like, we are family. She's my mother. Everyone's my sister or my brother. One of my friends is having a baby. That's now my niece. Like, you want to create a sense of family, you can do that. Like, my teacher just decided, I've been living in Chicago for 12 years. I'm from Rio. I don't have family here. I'm going to make my family. So I think even the words that we use and how we speak to each other can foster a sense of community. So it's really samba that has taught me to like look back at tango and say, wait, what's missing here, right? And I think it's for people like yourselves who are thinking about it to really build that. There's nothing to say you can't do the same thing. There's nothing to say like, you're my tango sister, you're my tango brother. You know, if little kids come into your class, oh, this is my tango baby. I never had children, but this is my tango baby. You know, you can foster that sense of community just by, you know, sharing and spreading that affection.
Yes, Nicole, you brought up a really good point. You made me think of a lot of things. And one thing that you said that made me think of something, a kind of a different topic, slightly related to what you were talking about. Trying to build that family feeling. I noticed myself, and I think Megan can relate to this because we were kind of talking about this as well. Nicole, you and I were talking about this as well, is that the people in the tango community individually are feeling somehow excluded out of something. So if you are Black and you are having this experience in tango that you wish could be different to help benefit your practice and what you have learned in the dance, if you are not having the experience you paid for, you are now going to visualize this community as, okay, well, maybe, you know, most of these people are racist, or, you know, maybe they just, you know, some people are closet racist, they can't get past my skin, something. You will find a reason why you are not allowed to have the experience that you see other people having that are paying the same amount as you are. And it is the same thing that I have seen and experienced with older ladies of any race. They feel exactly the same way. We are dealing with an ageism thing as well in the tango community. And so I can go down the list. I was talking to Adam, who's like, yeah, there's a thing, lookism, you know, you look attractive, you get the dance. If you don't look attractive, you sit your ass down, you know. So there's a thing. I would love to talk to you guys and figure out how can we help fix this problem. And I do see it as a problem. There's a lot of beautiful things within our tango community, but there are a lot of things that we are blind to, or a lot of things that have blindsided us to not feel what other people are going through. Sometimes we tend to lack the compassion for the other because our personal experience is better, which tends to go to the Black Lives Matter movement. I think we try to relate it because it's very similar in that way. People that have less than, they want to be heard, and then they're not heard. And the people that have the privilege, they're like, no, but everything is okay. And we tend to deal with the same thing within our community, rather it's racism, sexism, whatever you want to call it. Of course, in this moment, individually, we are trying to be better. We are trying to talk to each other and be more open to our opinions. I would love to see some kind of unification that brings us together to have like a very deep understanding on how we can make this change.
So Lauren, when you talk about, so where, how is, I would love for us to talk about like how privilege is showing up in tango. Who has it? who's it benefiting, and who doesn't have it, and how are they getting hurt by it? Because I think that this is the thing. I keep running up against this. The people in Tango that I'm talking to about this think that we don't have this problem, but it tends to be people who, of course, are probably not being as affected by it.
And do we have any consensus even within this group about what the problem is? Is there a problem?
Yeah.
I just wish I had a clearer understanding of. Maybe we disagree. Maybe there isn't a problem, but what are we trying to address here?
Right. Exactly. So one thing that Nicole mentioned earlier when we were talking, I love what she talked about. It's and I cannot remember. I cannot quote you, Nicole.
Contagion of violence. Was it?
Yes. Thank you.
I was sharing that with Megan a little earlier. I can explain it if you want. So 2 years ago, some of you read my article about a confession of a tango dancer, where I talk about various painful moments of rejection that I had to grapple with, like, is my race part of it? And I'll just say, as I already mentioned, I'm very privileged, and always been in diverse environments. So I had to conclude that it was. So I'm the type of person who loves to listen to NPR, and I was listening to a program once from epidemiologists, and they were talking about how violence spreads in communities, because epidemiologists are often in like developing nations, places with not good infrastructure, so they're battling diseases, whether it's SARS or COVID or Ebola. And they started to realize that violence spreads like an infectious disease. So 2 years ago, I was like, this is interesting. And I actually think it relates to tango, and I'd like to write about it. The problem is it's too esoteric. Nobody understands infectious diseases. How do I write about this in a way that people can understand? Because what I thought, if violent behavior can spread like a virus, and by the way, they proved that. They looked at gang violence in Chicago. They probably looked at violence in LA. They looked at gangs in India. They mapped it, they traced it. And then they also said, well, what do we do when we have a virus? Can we do remediation? So they did social distancing in communities of violence. And they found it does in fact look like every infectious disease they looked at. And it can be sort of minimized and mitigated by doing the things that you do when you have an infectious disease. So that theory became known as contagion of violence. So I was really interested in it. And I was like, that's cool. What about the reverse? Can we like infect people with good behavior? And I was actually convinced that we could, and I wanted to start continuing to write about it, but I sort of got distracted by things in my personal life. But I think that's true. I think when you look at a social dance community, particularly tango, because people get into it and then they start traveling, right? And what happens when you travel with a contagious disease? We all know now you have the ability to be infected and bring that infection back. And my theory on tango was, say you start with this lovely tiny community and you're really great and you're really close, and people start to become more advanced dancers, so they start to travel, and maybe they go to a community that's not so friendly, and they interact with the leaders of that community, and maybe they're very exclusive, right? Or maybe they're racist or whatever it is. That person, that new tango dancer who's now going into that community, may be influenced by the behavior of those leaders and brings back some of that negativity into the community, right? And suddenly you're seeing tango, like when people ask from the outside, when you're like, hey, I don't think tango is elitist at all, but other people are like, yeah, it is. That's what they're talking about, right? This behavior, like we shape some of our behavior based on like what we think that they do in Argentina, whether they do it or not. Jamila talked about that a little bit. Like we think Argentina is this way, and actually it's a little bit different. And that means also they're a little bit more communal than what we actually are in the US, in Europe. But all these ideas of tango, elitism, all the little microaggressions, to steal something from racism, that we put on each other, that behavior becomes the norm, right? So the idea is, if bad behavior can spread, can we perhaps spread good behavior? And that comes from the people at the top, right? We need people like yourselves who are leaders, who are advanced dancers, to teach the new generation how to feel about it, right? And how to interact. And you can influence other leaders as well. So that was just an idea I had like 2 years ago, and I was like, no one's going to understand it. I'll get back to it eventually. But now everyone understands infectious diseases, right? And the idea that you go somewhere and they're sick and you get sick and you take it back with you and you make the people around you sick, that is not just a disease, that is a behavioral issue. And my background, I don't think I mentioned, my background in psychology, so like I've always been drawn to these type of topics, but I think I think now it's something that people can understand and think about. So while we can't dance during COVID, we can think a lot about our code of ethics. We can think about how we treat each other. We can think about whether we want to, as I said, like my Samba community, like, do I leave this room and you're all my brothers and sisters? Those things matter, right? And they change the tone of the community. And it really does come from the leadership. Like I know the person in LA who does her Samba community event, she's also a clinical psychologist. And so what's interesting about Anna, she's a super awesome, tough lady. She's very clear, like zero tolerance on inappropriate behavior at her event. I don't care if you flew in from France, there will be no sexual harassment. You can go back home. There will not be racist treatment. It's not to say that people, that they're not always on the best behavior, but there is a line, right? And so I think we as a community can say, where is our line? Because I know as someone who's been in Tango for a while, like I've heard the stories that you've probably heard too, of people being even like really extreme behavior, being assaulted sexually at a weekend event where we're staying at strangers' houses, or that one creepy guy or the one aggressive guy, or even women sexually assault men. Like, I think if we're talking about social behavior, we have to understand that all the bad that's out in the world, it's in our community too, right? Just statistically.
So I think like I want to talk about that specifically. Like, where is it in LA? How is it showing up? Is it showing up? Who's it coming from?
Got it. Got it.
For you guys, that I cannot answer.
I know Nicole can't answer that, but the rest of us can. I would like to get specific. Like, I don't think people believe that it's happening. I don't even think they know what we're talking about.
I don't think something that's always blatant and in your face. I mean, sometimes it definitely is, but I think a lot of it is, as you say, microaggressions and small things that if you're a person of color, you're usually tuned into that, to the messaging that comes, that's subtle sometimes. And I think, Megan, you had said something earlier, but I think about people not understanding or even recognizing there's a problem, if you've ever gone anywhere and you've never wondered or felt or recognized that maybe you were the only person of your color in that room, or wondered if you're being treated differently because you look differently, then that's why you don't see the problem. That's my opinion. And that's why I think a lot of people don't understand that what you're talking about is real and relevant, because they've never had that experience. It's not something a lot of, that people always identify with, or they're just in denial.
What is it about LA that it seems like we have a really high percentage of, like openly racist people? Not LA, Tango in general, but in LA, mildly racist people. What is it?
I was going to share something on that, but first, I think, Johnny, did you have something that you wanted to say on that?
Yeah. I was going to say, we have a lot of racial prejudice in LA. It exists. It's not just a white or black thing. There's the light skins and the dark skin Asians. There's the light skin and the dark skin Hispanics. There's all the history of like all the wars in Persia and old Persian, old Soviet Union. Some Russians and Armenians don't like each other. Some Armenians and Turkish people don't like each other. It's there. It's floating around. There's a lot of cultural you're shoving people who left their countries because of some kind of political turmoil or for whatever reason they were refugees or their parents were refugees, and they come here and they meet their oppressors at the Milonga. So it's gonna be
Whoa.
a little spicy, but with that said, yeah, Lauren's laughing, but it's true. But
Holy shit.
But with that said, I think the LA Tango community has been an incredible community for taking down racism, because I have heard some racist things being said and just racist sentiments. And there's like straight up, I don't like orange people. And then there's like, I don't think orange people have good musicality or whatever. It could be, you know, all levels of that. But it has been Tango is a pretty good meritocracy, probably the best I can think of in any community really, where if you're a good dancer, you will get danced with. Doesn't matter
It's
what
not
color
true.
you are.
I don't think it's true.
It's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. Like, I have seen people who say, you know, oh, I don't like Russians. I don't like Russians at all. I never liked them. They're my enemies. But I look at the Milonga and this person is dancing with the Russian person half the night away. So,
But
you know
if
what
it
I
was
mean?
a meritocracy, there would be a lot of older ladies dancing a lot more. And that's just one of the more obvious ones.
I'm just saying it's the closest for me that I've seen because I've seen in other communities where no matter how good you are, you're not going to get the promotion. You're not going to get the attention. Nobody wants to be your friend, no matter how nice of a personality or how well you can do whatever it is that circle does. So I think Tango is I mean, it could be improved, but from what I've seen, I felt like it's helped even racist people overcome their nasty inner thoughts.
Yes. I mean, I will say that what Johnny says is definitely valid, based off of his perception and a perception of many. We all have different perceptions. And I do completely empathize with his perception. Hold on, I hear a kid.
Somebody have kids in the background? Can you mute?
Okay. Girl. I completely empathize and understand where he's coming from, because what you're trying to look for, Megan, I understand you're saying like, show me where this is coming from. It's almost like, show me the money. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard because I feel like what's happening is that we sense it and we feel it, but we can't literally tell you exactly what is the cause. I can tell you a wide variety of what I think is the cause. I think personally for me, more ladies should be leading so that they don't need to sit on their asses. They can actually do both roles and then be more a part of the community that way. That also helps promote a future change, of having like a fresh new mind of experience in the dance. So some ladies don't want to do that. Like, yeah, that sounds great and everything, but I don't want to do that. I just want to follow. I want to enjoy myself. I want to have fun. I don't want to have to sit on my ass. So then we have to think of racism or ageism or what is it, you know? The thing is that a lot of people that come to Tango, they want to let go, they want to let loose, they want to just dance with friends and have fun and not have to worry about anything. However, it's interesting that even though we don't want politics in Tango, we tend to be very political in Tango. Does that make sense? So it's like, what we are trying to escape from, we are naturally bringing it into the community. So I think it's like a wide spectrum of things that we have to check with ourselves. Me being a Black woman, I have personally not really felt that my skin color has affected my dances. However, I'm also an attractive woman. So I know that caters to me getting more dances. Does that make it justifiable? No, I feel everyone should have an equal right to be able to dance, which is why I also fell in love with leading as well, because I was like, I don't want to keep just following a whole bunch of guys that want to dance with me because of whatever they're getting out of it. I would like to dance with people that want to follow and give them that equal experience as well, even if I have to sacrifice my follow and end up leading more. because to me, that's making more of a statement, but that's my perception of it. I think what Nicole was saying, and actually what Johnny was saying, that if we individually, like in his own way, I get it. Like if we go in being our best selves, you know, people will have a perception of us regardless. But I think people will understand where we are coming from, the root of our care within the community, and that will spread more awareness and compassion for other people, rather than, Nicole, please tell me what this is right here.
I mentioned, we came up with an analogy. I called it the privilege pivot, which is the idea that you asked like what is it? Why aren't we talking about it? So I know a number of you know, or maybe don't, how I kind of got started into talking about Tango again, as opposed to this pause from 2 years ago, is I wrote something in a Tango group about my experience as a privileged Black person. The premise of that was, if someone like me has had enough, that's a litmus test for the rest of the country, right? Like I have an Ivy League degree, I work in tech, I have a PhD, like that's literally like 1% less the population falls in that group. So if I, the person who's always had friends across communities, privilege, if I'm like, I'm done, you should be concerned about the rest of Black America. You should be concerned about the rest of immigrant America. You should be concerned about the rest of brown America. I thought about my privilege a lot over life, but I think where the privilege pivot comes is when I was expressing that in the community, the response I got was a lot of support, but the managers of that Facebook group said, I'm coming here to escape COVID. I'm here to have fun. And so there's a couple things I think we need to talk about. First of all, what racism is and what it looks like. Nobody ever called me the N-word in a milonga. Nobody actually even, well, there's some disrespect, but it was never overt, right? And I don't even know that it was necessarily conscious, their choice to dance or not dance with me. So that's the first thing we need to understand, like how it works. But we are in the United States. We are not a meritocracy here. You know, I've heard historians say we were born a slavetocracy. So what that means, right? What's going on now? That's all connected. So that's the first thing we need to understand. We cannot expect that all of this baggage is at the door and isn't influencing people. But what I talk about the privilege pivot is, say I am a dancer who dances a lot, or I'm a young white woman who is very sexy and everyone wants to teach me how to dance. Like you could say, this is my experience. So I think this is everyone's, whether you're conscious of that or not. And when you want to have that conversation, the person can either be like, you lovely people here who are like, let's talk about it. Or the person could be like the person in the group who says, I want to watch more bread videos and I want to watch more cat videos because COVID's getting me down. I think the perspective of being a minority in the United States, and that's how I responded to, like, I can't go to the internet to escape because that's where statistically, and that's where women are harassed more. That's where minorities are harassed more. That's where I see all the videos before they hit the national news of the latest Black person who's murdered, or the woman who calls the police on someone for like going into their building. So like for me, there is no pivot. Like there's no place I go or expect to go. And I'm the 1% of privilege of Black people. I'm the 1% of privilege of white people in terms of my educational and work background. Okay. But there's no place where I go where I don't see that. Right. And so I think the first thing people need to do is, even if they've had this great experience, like listen and validate, and not try to like cure it with simple things. Same time I was struggling to dance in tango, just having a rough time in grad school. I was like this horrible chronic insomniac. I mean, I would go a week, 2 weeks without really sleeping. And I would tell that to my friends, and you know what they would say? Drink hot milk. Like, you think I haven't tried that? I haven't slept in 14 days. Like, I'm not asking for your medical advice. I am seeing a doctor for that. I'm asking for your sympathy, right? And so I think the first thing is when someone talks to you about feeling left out in tango, we're so quick to say, take more lessons, talk to more people. Da, 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 da. And I think there is a place for that. If you legitimately see that person not doing something, or like, oh, you've never heard of Capaceo, like help them understand. But I think we're too quick to say that's not really a problem because, and I'm not picking on you, Johnny, but like, this is the most meritocratous place. Like, please don't ever say that to someone who goes to you and like in pain. And I know that's not your goal of the comment. This is your experience, but I think we have to start first by like listening, validating, don't even try to solve, just showing that you understand. And then maybe like, can we talk about it? Can I see if I can help? But where I hope this group goes, like everyone had advice for me, and what we needed was advice for the community, right? Like I did all the things, by the way, without anyone telling me. I bought more expensive clothes. I did more classes. I'm like, I'll just rack up my student loan. Like, I'm still paying this debt off, right? And you know, and I learned to lead. I took private lessons, like, but those things didn't necessarily change. What we needed to do was like change the climate of the community. It shouldn't be on the burden of the person who feels left out to like troubleshoot and do everything under the sun to try to fit in. So the first thing I would say, and in your community may be like above average. You may be the most inclusive tango place in the world, like seriously, like you could be, but the work is never done, right? And so the work is never done because, as you said, Megan and David, you're in Inglewood and you're like, how do we get more Black people in here? Like, the work is done when you walk into your milonga and it looks statistically representative of the United States, whether you're talking race, class, age, ability. And not only that, like, it's not just this diverse place where the older ladies are sitting around watching people, because I was there with them too. And it's really representative when you're in the line of dance. So that is when you know the work is done. But I don't think we ever get there. I think that's a process.
Yeah. You brought up something on how you felt that the issues that you had within the community became a burden for you to hold alone. And I know right now we are dealing with that with the Black Lives Movement, where a lot of people of color felt that they had to deal with this movement alone. And if anything, it wasn't even their problem. So I understand why Megan and David are feeling the need to also reflect into their community and say, well, how the fuck is this affecting us? And I would just say what Nicole said is that you guys are definitely heading in the right direction. If you're expecting a cure, I think what you do from here on is going to be that cure, and it will not be overnight. It's just something that you guys are more aware of, you're more in tune to. You're probably going to listen to your students a lot more. I know I definitely am going to listen to my students a lot more. Once we officially become organizers again, however that works, I have a feeling that if we keep this open line of communication, especially going in by having a code of conduct, which we didn't really have before, I do really appreciate Adam and a few others stepping up to help create this for our community, because the blues community has one, the swing community has one. There's a lot of communities that have the code of conduct, and it's not to police the people. If anything, it's just to literally remind people what is appropriate. It's literally it's reminding them something they already know. However, if they feel superior at all in any circumstance, now us organizers or teachers or students have the right to say, hey, you're violating the code of conduct. So I think it gives that space. Um, so with knowing that, yeah, again, I don't think it's an instant night or day solution and trying to, pinpoint on a particular thing that makes this wrong. If anything, just keep doing what you guys are doing and making it right.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess the reason I keep harping on this specificity is that it feels to me that anytime we bring up this in the community, we get a very powerful pushback saying there's no problem. There's no problem. Everything's fine. And it's not clear what to say. Sometimes I feel like people are asking me to bring them 10 Black people to tell them all the things that they're experiencing. And this has actually been done in a bunch of different forums. I've heard it. It was very powerful. I don't really want to have to do that every time we want to start a conversation about this. Because I feel like we can never even get to that next step of admitting that there's something even to discuss here. And so I just feel a little. Sometimes I just don't. I'm not sure exactly what to say. How to quickly convince somebody that there's even something here to discuss. I'm not even sure that we have consensus in this group that there's anything to discuss, and that's okay. But I guess that's why I'm harping on this a little bit. Not that I think it's going to be easy or simple, or just how do we have a clear issue, and how do we articulate that to people that doubt that we do?
Sorry, go ahead, Johnny, and then
I think Johnny, and then we'll get Ron. Ron's been trying to get in there for a second.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's hard because like there's race, but there's also a whole bunch of other prejudices going. There's the ageism thing, or how attractive you look, or how well you dance. And even amidst all this, we have a huge gender imbalance. And then we have this, not just a gender imbalance, but like a gender role imbalance where the males have to do all the asking, or the leaders have to do all the asking. So, I can tell you right now, I'm super prejudiced. If I look out there, I might go, okay, I have 30 minutes here. I'm probably going to favor A more than B, or C more than D, or even if there's two people out there and one is the better looking one and looks like she dances better, I might actually go and pick the other follower because I maybe don't want to get rejected that night. So, there's so many things at hand, and it's hard to narrow it down to race and to fix only like the race aspect of it. I think there's so many ways to disqualify potential dance partners.
Dave, what I was going to say, and it's similar to what Johnny was just saying. Next time you ask somebody and then they say, well, what's the problem? Then be specific. Ask them, well, when's the last time you danced with a beginner? When's the last time you danced with an older woman, or a not so attractive woman? You could check them out during the night, see who they dance with. As a guy who dances in several, dance communities, one thing is consistent. There are a lot of guys who show up because they want to dance with young, good-looking women. When you have young, good-looking beginners that show up, how many guys line up to teach them?
A lot.
And you tell me how many times that happens with an older, maybe not so attractive woman. Okay, if it happens at all. So again, I think we certainly in terms of these prejudices, yes, they do exist, but I think what all these dance communities do, including Tango, is it creates sort of a melting pot. Somebody was mentioning the fact that somebody told them they hate Russians, but they'll dance with a Russian all night long. When we go to dance, myself, that's one of the things that really got me into it. At the time I was, I had an office and employees and all that pressure, and dance helped relieve that pressure. It was another world. It was just another universe. And I think for a lot of people, that's still the same. In the ballroom community, I hang out with a lot of Asians, and I was surprised. The Koreans don't like the Chinese, who don't like the Vietnamese, and nobody likes the Japanese. But in the dance community, though, somehow most of that is overlooked. I mean, every now and then you hear a comment, here and there, but generally speaking, that's overlooked. I say, and I wrote this down, contagious behavior. That is true. You don't know how many times, I've been told about how there's some guys that come into the community as nice guys, shy, quiet, and then they learn how to dance, they get good, and then they become a-holes. Okay, this happens again and again, and that's that contagious behavior, that you're talking about. I think the solution to this is similar to what Mike Robert Lee said and what I suggested earlier. You've got to start to make people more sensitive, not necessarily, try to eradicate racism. You're never going to do that, but make people more sensitive to other people, make people more respectful of other people. You know what I mean? Encourage young guys to go ask older women who they see sitting around not being asked to dance at least once, in the night, and make that the new contagious behavior. You know what I mean? So that we start to build a more inclusive community by making people nicer people. The guy who put his knee on the black guy's neck, in Minneapolis, okay? He's an a-hole, okay? Because only a a-hole would do something like that, And most of the people who are causing the problems in our communities are a-holes, okay? And you have black a-holes, you have white a-holes, you have Asian a-holes, you know what I mean? So again, I think that, and you're never going to eradicate them entirely. But what you can do is create a different sort of consciousness in the community. And I think that is, if I was you guys, that is what I'd be, trying to do as best you can.
We're breeding a-holes somehow.
Whole thing.
You know what?
Oh wait, can we get Nicole in here Nicole?
Quick,
Nicole number 2 in here real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So, my name is Nicole. Hi, everyone. And just want to say this is a great conversation. I wish I chimed in earlier, but I guess I was feeling a little tired. But I'll try to be quick about this. For me, I kind of experienced the bias, unfortunately, at Oxygen. At the sign-in, I'm there with Dave and Megan, and they hired me as a Tango bear to help out with the studio, and I've been enjoying that immensely. So I'm very grateful for that. But I have noticed, I used to work on one day, and I got switched to one of their main advanced classes, and I have noticed that if I'm at the sign-in and I'm right at the front door, it's almost as if I am invisible. And then I have to corral the person to get them to sign in. And it is not once, it's repeated. And I can't use, I guess how you say, my sister girl voice. I have to be like, excuse me, you didn't sign in. So that's called code switching. So I have to code switch. And then when I get the person to sign in, they don't write legibly. They write with chicken scratch. And then they'll say, oh, I'm in the system. I don't know you. Or they'll say, oh, I know the people. Oh, I know David and Megan. I don't care. I don't know you. You don't know me. Let's introduce ourselves to each other. And I don't care if we do this for the next 20,000 times or till the end of time. You're going to sign in and you're going to notice me, because I have seen it where there's a white person at the sign in and they'll sign in. Or if there's a person that's a non-Black person of color, they'll sign in. And this happens repeatedly over and over and over and over. And I'm tired.
First
it's
of all,
unfortunate. Oh, go on.
no, I was gonna say, don't cold switch. I know, I really like doing
I
it.
know. I don't want to, but
No, because I just get more radical the older I get. Just fucking be yourself. Like, part of the reason why I work where I work is that I finally had an environment where I could just like, I'm the only Black person in the team. We just got someone after like 4 years. You know what I said? It made some people uncomfortable, but other people laughed. I said, thank God I'm not the only one anymore. Like, you know, I think people become, and I laughed. And then, you know, my one friend laughed and it was like, she said it, not me. I think we have to be ourselves. That's number one. Even if people are a little bit uncomfortable, totally understand what you're saying. And as a Black person in the sign-in, believe me, there are many times. So in Chicago, I'm on this young professional board of this theater and I subscribe. And they do a talk series on the subscriber night. And theater is older and white. I was once wearing like a sequins dress and I'm just trying to sit down to the talk series. I'm a little late. This older white lady hands me her trash, which I do not accept, by the way. And I was like, everybody else is dressed like an usher. There is a uniform. I'm wearing like a sequins dress. That might be a little hint, but all she saw was a Black person. And so back to the tango, when people are like, how do you know? It's because I have tons of those situations in the theater too. I'm sitting next to two older white ladies with their Ticketmaster printouts for their one show. Oh, are you a friend of someone in the dance company? Because it's more likely in their mind that I got a ticket for free. And I'm talking American Ballet Theater. I'm talking boy show. It's more plausible that someone gave me this ticket than I could afford it. To which I always say, I'm a subscriber and I'm on the board. Oh, really? What do you do? What do you work? Like this full vetting. Black people are often in the space. And again, like I'm a privileged person. I can't even imagine for like everybody else in the community, but we are often having to prove that we belong in a space, that we are not being a servant in the space, that we exist. And so if you saw the talk the other day, Thea was like scanning the room and it's like dancer, 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 Black woman, like that, truth to it. Like, you know, that woman who gave me her trash did not notice how I was dressed, just that I was like the only Black person in that room that day. And so therefore I must have been someone to take her trash. And by the way, here's the difference between sometimes younger and older people. She was of a generation where it was clear that she made the mistake and she was not at all fucking embarrassed or apologetic. Like if she was 20, she would, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And like, but this one was like, oh, well, this one's not my servant, but someone else is. And so that is America. That is a reality. I've had lots of situations in different spaces work. I'm a researcher. I go and study people in context. There have been times when I'm doing my work as a researcher, observing people, and you know, I'm in a store watching the environment and people are like, can I have the shoes? I'm like, don't you see I have like a clipboard and recording equipment? Do you think I work at the shoe store? No. And so Black people are perceived as certain things. And in Tango, I think we are often invisible. And I imagine, Nicole, as someone who also is volunteering and working in the space, I can't imagine what it's like for you on the dance floor if the person won't even say hello to you at the table, with this mentality that Black people are in certain roles in our society. And so that's just a reality. That's not even what I wanted to talk about, long tangent. But I think some of your answers can be found in people who do this work, right? So how many people have heard of the book White Fragility?
Oh, yeah.
I went to a free talk, which I will send you the recording because they recorded it and it went to Zoom. Here's the beautiful part about COVID. All this shit is online and a lot of times free, where it would have been a talk and you had to be there. So the author talked about, if you ask people, and this gets back to your question, Megan, where's the problem? Are you racist? If you go up to anyone in the world, including that woman who tried to hand me my trash, like, there are some extreme people, but most people will say, I am not racist. And that is because, and that's a whole other conversation, what it means to be racist. People think it just means you're a bad person, but we all have bias, right? And that's a different story. But what she suggested was, instead of asking, am I racist? The question should be, how am I racist? And I wrote that down because I wanted to flip that specifically for the Tango community, but not even from a negative. Instead of asking, is Tango inclusive? Ask, how are we being inclusive, right? Because on that first Tango thing I wrote 2 years ago, where I talked about, you know, people not dancing with me and things like that, there's a part where I say, actually, this is for your community. People think their community doesn't have a problem, right? But if everyone in your community cannot name the things you're doing to ensure it's a welcoming, safe space, then you are not doing those things. And that is something I learned a little bit from blues. And again, they're not perfect. There is a community, literally a Facebook community that I was invited to, of people of color in blues who are like fed up. And no white people are allowed in this space. So that's the first thing I need you guys to understand. Like, there are these communities where people are like, and tango, blues also, it's like Black people's music. And even in blues, Black people don't always feel like they're invited. So the first thing is not, am I racist? Is my community a meritocracy? Am I what? How? What are we doing? And everyone should know. It should be like politics. I'll give the NRA as example. We hate them, but everyone knows their speaking points. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. You guys need to have a message about what you're about and what you're not about. And it needs to be simple enough that everyone understands it. It needs to be simple enough for when the tango assholes that we talk about, they're not lost cause. When they're starting to get good and they're starting to be a jerk, that's when, on that path, you're like, hey, we're not about that here. You know, great job on that Volcata, but like, we're not about that and how you treat other people. One last thing I want to say, and I know I'm talking too much, but again, for me, the contrast is in samba. So in Rio, for Carnival, this huge party, if you go, and if they have it again, you will notice, built around these samba schools, thousands of people. Each school starts the parade. It's a competition. What you will generally see is the older people in the community, the disabled people in the community, they will be up front. It's not uncommon to see the parade start with someone wheeling someone down in a wheelchair. There is a role for every person, from child to adult. There is a role called Bayanas, where you have to be 65 years and older and a woman to be in that role. Can you imagine like a place of privilege and honor for older tango women? That is samba. That's also Brazilian culture. Like, there is no throwing away of people. Everyone has a role. And so if we want that for tango, we should just build it. The final thing I will say, because I work in tech is always the industry showing other industries what to do, what's cool, right? But we talk about collaboration a lot. So we're always experimenting with different ways that we can bring our teams together in different parts of the business to solve a problem, right? Who says we can't do that in tango? So we have a tanda. Can we break the tanda? Can we create some kind of activity where we encourage people who have never danced with each other or haven't danced with each other that night to randomly dance? Why not? You know, there's no rules. I would say, as a leader, like, the leaders of the community, let's start experimenting with ways that we get different people to interact and mix regardless of their choices. So we've taken the social pressure out of whether you're going to be rejected by the prettier dancer or whether it's based on just your attraction. Why not? Why not have an activity? Why not pull a name out of a hat? Like, you have to get people interacting, right? Outside of their choices and biases that we'll never eliminate. But all of those things are possible, and they get less scary when you do them over time. So I would just say, like, as a leader, midway in the milonga, hey, we're going to do something a little different tonight, and talk about why you're doing it. Like, we just notice everyone's dancing with the same people. Doesn't that get boring sometimes? We're going to play this little activity just for one tanda, where we're going to mix people up randomly. And, like, you know, because I think those are the ways that you change. It's not just like, we're going to write these code of ethics and then paste them on the wall next to Nicole and hope that people read them and greet her. Like, that's not how it works. And then I would say, for like teachers, if I were doing this activity as the leader, I would say, hey, we're gonna like give some preference to people who haven't danced tonight. And by the way, I, as the teacher, or maybe the best dancer in the room, I'm gonna start off and dance with maybe the worst person, or the brand new person, or the person who's visiting that nobody talked to. Like, you have to show by example. And it's just a small thing, but I think over time, those things really matter, right? So I would say look for inspiration outside, and study people who study things like racism and all kinds of isms, because they will give you models. But I think if you just turn to anyone who struggles with it, ask them how they're being inclusive, how they're being welcoming, really push for them.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there, Nicole. We've all sort of assumed that tango is sort of inclusive by default, when there's really not been, in LA tango, a particular push and systems put in place to be an inclusive space. And in fact, I would say, kind of priding ourselves on being expensive and exclusive. We have been on this call for 90 minutes. I want to make sure I'm not keeping anybody past when they need to go. I have one more question that I would really like to pose to the group. If you need to go, just go, totally fine, no judgments. But I really want to ask, this was a comment on the video from last week, and I think it's pertinent to LA in particular. If we're starting to look comics plays in
one more time.
Oh shit, am I here?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh great, just in time for me to say oh shit. So
Repeat.
If a lot of this has to do with economic access, what does the rise of the tango competition, where does that sit in this world? Because they're extremely expensive. It's started to become sort of the de facto way that you can get recognized. So we've become a city known for competition. So what does this do? Where does this sit in the conversation?
You want to know what the discrimination is in competition?
Do I want to know what?
You want to know what the discrimination is in competition?
Is holding up competitions and emphasizing competitions going to further disclude people from tango because it's so expensive, is what I'm asking.
Interesting enough, I was thinking of that, and I was also thinking about what Johnny just said. And then David, I have to answer something to you from earlier. Johnny brings up a good point. The particular people that are running, that are organizing competitions, without naming, because there are some good people, but there are people that have very biased points of views as being organizers with the competition. The competition alone, the idea of a competition alone, I think is great. I think it helps build a community. I think it allows people a chance to be awarded for their hard work. Yes, there can be multiple programs. It doesn't have to be one program, an expensive program. It can actually be multiple programs. You guys could have your own competition. It could be for free. It could be for a discount. No one needs to have a certification for having a competition. There's just certain people that decided to have competitions and then make it legit.
And make them really damn expensive for good reason. It's expensive to put them on, but it is a barrier. I think it's tough. They're written, not just the cost of the competition, but to get ready for it and to have the clothes for it and the hair and the makeup.
Absolutely. And I know in the ballroom community. I'm not a part of the ballroom community, but I know a lot of friends that are in the ballroom community, and then Ron can back me up on this and share. But I know that majority of them are all about the competitions, the dedication that they put in with their teachers and what they share and what they showcase. It's all about showcases, competition, showcase, competition. This is like a repetition thing besides the social dancing atmosphere. So Tango is trying to be on that side so that they can also benefit what the ballroom industry has benefited, because obviously the ballroom industry creates a lot of students. So I understand the mindset to that on how you can develop the community to be better and appreciate a particular dance because of how they are showcasing it. However, right now we are just experiencing one program, like you said, the expensive program. I would love to organize and be a part of something with whoever wants to get involved of creating competitions that are fun and affordable and mostly fun, because it gives the students an opportunity to showcase themselves without feeling that they have to be an emerging professional or professional to be seen for the hard work that they've done. Everyone deserves that equal chance to have that. And I kind of did that with the community builders. I don't know if you guys remember that, when I was trying to bring the teachers and have some of the students dancing and then showing the teachers dancing and say like, hey, these are badass people and they're in your own community. We don't have to always get some imported people to show that, this is the only right. So yeah, with that being said, like, this is something that we can create. It doesn't mean like it's like, oh, it's unfair, but there's nothing that we can do about it. There's no certification, we can do it. It's totally possible. It's totally doable. And David, to answer your question, I know that Ron was talking about it and Johnny was talking about it. And I wanted to just add to that, and Nicole, both Nicoles. But I wanted to add to that the people that are telling you that they don't see it and that they don't understand what the hoopla is all about, and to them the community is fine, I would advise, for my own personal sake as well, to actually just allow those people to be who they want to be. To constantly interact with them and try to change their point of view is kind of senseless in this moment. However, what you continue to do and what you showcase naturally, like the trend, they will start to appreciate what you did and then support it, whether they realize they were or not. So, trend is bad and good. If you're just trending temporarily, like Black Lives Matter, there's some people that are just trending off of that. So if you are just riding the storm because it works for you and your benefit, you're still just reflecting as like a selfish person that doesn't understand the whole. But if you are literally a walking statement of that and you keep showcasing yourself as a cause, like for instance, Tango community, that's your cause as well, right? You guys are deeply ingrained into this, and you represent something, being organizers and holding an academy. So if you guys just keep supporting what your academy means to you, there are going to be many of people that support that, and all of the people that didn't see or didn't feel it was necessary to see what you saw, they might change their mind, but they might change it later. Or maybe they won't change it at all, but maybe they won't even show up to your event. And who wants them to, would you want them to come to your event when you have so many other people that are there to support you? So I would just say, disregard them. If they want to talk to you, it's like, yeah, I'll share you my opinion. But if it's all about trying to change it, I don't think that can happen literally in this moment.
What the change also, before I forget, is it's going to have to come from the top. So, I think the way that you're having these discussions now with us I think you should have similar, or at least attempt similar discussions like this with all organizers of Tango events in LA. And like Lauren says, some of them are going to say, whatever, but then some of them will take heed, and we might begin to slowly see, some changes bubbling up from the top as well as what you promote from below. But as for competitions in Tango, I've been involved in ballroom for a long time. In fact, I began in ballroom studying as a competition dancer until I really found out what it was about. Yes, they are very expensive. Yes, they encourage the best in amateur dance, but they also, in this, you have to be very careful. They also divide the community like nothing else. I've been dancing, I say socially, ballroom for at least 20 years, okay? You do not see competition dancers at ballroom social dances. That is a fact.
It's separate. It's
Yeah.
two separate.
There's
Oh,
two,
interesting.
yeah, they're two separate things, So if you think that the tango community is divided now, okay, if there is a push to model the ballroom competition program in tango, Lord help us for what it would be like in 5 years or so.
But you can showcase people. So you said competitions are expensive.
Yeah. No. I'm not saying. I'm
No,
saying if you're using the model.
I'm not saying what you think. What I was going to suggest to you, Megan, is I'm assuming you have milongas and there are intermissions, and you could give a space once a month to someone who wants to perform, whether they're a beginner group, whether they're an intermediate group, and it's not a competition, it's just an opportunity for them to show what they're doing and what they're working on. It doesn't have to be a competition. And, I don't have a lot of experience with tango in the competition space and what that means, but I will say, that doesn't necessarily have to be the tone of your community, because I keep thinking back to Brazil in particular. I mean, literally, Carnival is a competition, and there's money, and there's even corruption, by the way. So, but it's all based on these schools and their communities, and
it has been, I think, to speak to what Ron was saying, I think it has been divisive in a way.
But that doesn't have to be your brand. And here's my theory. If you make your space the most inclusive, what is going to happen over time is all the people who are tired of the bullshit other places are going to slowly figure out that you are home, right? And so you can't stop competitions in LA, but you don't have to be a part of it. And you can do whatever you feel is great to promote your brand and who you are in a positive way, not in a icky commercial way. And so I wouldn't even worry about that.
I teach, or I was teaching at Atomic before the pandemic, and we were going in a direction in the month of February into the month of March, because we were trying to downgrade our milongas. We were having it once a week. We were having a lot of competition with other milongas, and we were trying to figure out how to make it more appealing, make it more attractive, and then also listen to what the students want to make sure that they are coming to our milongas as much as they are going to other milongas outside of our studio. One thing that we are practicing that I feel would have been a great start. Unfortunately, we had the pandemic. We had one show, and then we were going to have another show. The one show was to showcase all of the teachers. Rather than hiring a teacher from outside, we were showcasing the teachers there. And we even showcased swing teachers that night. Burlesque routine was happening that night. So we were giving a show to the students to show hey, these are the teachers that teach at Atomic, and they don't just do Argentine tango. Because the students like to integrate and do other dances, which I think is great, and it makes them have more of a mindful experience that, tango doesn't have to be their only world, even though we want them to embrace it like all the other dances. The next milonga that we were going to have, but we unfortunately had to cancel it. We had 3 students lined up that we were going to showcase. Dedicated students to Atomic, and it was going to be the open door for us to show that, hey, you too can be on the stage and you don't have to be a professional. Because for me at Atomic, we tend to notice this more. Students want to dance and do showcase. And they have a showcase theatrical thing that they do once a year. But this would be like the small series effect before they had this big show. And with all honesty, it really makes the students feel like now they are a part of something. And it really helps. So I know whatever happens socially with our dance after the pandemic, through the pandemic, I don't think there's an after the pandemic. I think we just got to get through it. But whatever happens to our social dance, I definitely want that to continue. However, I also want to bring on board learning from you guys to make a safe space through this development of students being able to showcase their work.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't want to pour water on the whole competition thing, because I have to tell you that I've also been involved with swing competitions for a very long time across the country, and they are totally different. The people, all the kids that you see dancing in those swing competitions, you see on the floors dancing at the social dances, during the week. So I'm not saying it has to go the way of ballroom. I'm just saying that is a possibility, and the organizers may. I don't think these organizers are going to want to look into it, because when I first heard the idea, first thing came into my mind, this is another way for these guys to try to start making more money. That's just my personal opinion.
All right, I'm gonna say some stuff.
I mean, I think
Am I
that
muted?
is
Okay, I'm
against
muted.
the intention. So
By
it.
yeah, so for the competition thing, like half the people who compete, it's because they want to go somewhere with their career. They don't want to die in a tango community that just watches Argentinians over and over again. So it's the only way for them to have a platform to be seen, because the community doesn't do any community showcases. And you have people here with dreams, and none of the organizers here are feeling that. They'd much rather pay an Argentinian, put an Argentinian on the flyer, and use that to sell them a longa than to use their best student or whatever, right? So they're chasing the money. So this is a chance for aspiring dancers to try to grow their craft and reach the next level of their artistic dreams. And then on the other side, we have the people who just want their 15 minutes of fame, right? They just want to put on a nice dress, take some nice photos, and show some to the grandkids or something. So, and our community doesn't cater to that as well. We don't have a community showcase. So, that's where these local competitions come in. I know there's a lot of people feel they're exclusive, or because of the price thing. So I know this, in other communities in Argentina, when they tried to do like local competitions, regardless of who won, people always claim that, oh, there's in-house favoritism, the scoring is bull crap, blah, 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 it wasn't fair. So they have no choice but to bring in, to pay for outside teachers that have some kind of credibility. And once you bring that in, it costs money. Once you bring in the lighting and all that, just to pay for their visas, just to get them here, it's really expensive. So, and then as for like the fees and all that, like what you're paying, like I actually think it's pretty cheap. I really do. I think it's far more affordable. I mean, just use your nicest address. You don't have to go out and buy something, you don't have to pay for hair and makeup. I imagine
But that's easy to say that's not easy to do when you're the chick doing that and everybody else is really done up, I get it that you should just like grab your balls and do it, but it's just not, it's really, you feel a lot of pressure to be very done up. A lot.
I mean, I can see that. I can see that, but it's like that's part of the fun, and it's up to you if you want to be a part of that. But I also know the judges aren't they don't care.
Come on, really?
I sincerely believe they don't care. But with that said, somebody who is willing to spend all their money and all that, there's a good chance they're willing to spend all their money to do that because they trained all year long to kick everybody else's ass. So you know what I mean? They bought their plane ticket from Chicago, from Canada, wherever. They're coming here. They're taking scalps. So, you know what I mean?
But there's no way that like the attractiveness and the body type of those dancers it's not figuring in. Like
there's been a lot of politics about this, and there is officially a thing now in the Mundial where they say who gets the gordito card, which is who gets the fat card, because they're trying to do this inclusive thing where every year out of the top 5. They have at least 1 or 2 foreigners. They have at least one fat couple or fat guy. It's officially a thing. The 2016 was, built like a barrel. So, and then the years following him, 2nd, 3rd, or 5th place was also a large individual.
What about here?
Huh?
Here.
What about here?
I'm not seeing that here. I'm not even sure if that's necessarily the right way to go about it, honestly. But
I feel the scoring has been pretty fair. I felt the scoring has been pretty fair. There have been years where I felt like I might have switched like 2nd and 4th place around, or somebody was 5th and I thought they should have been 3rd. But I felt it was mostly fair. And actually, if anything, if there's bias in the scoring, usually it's a style bias.
Yeah,
like the dancers that win are the ones that dance like the judges. And lately I haven't seen that. I felt the judges were able to choose dancers that didn't dance their style.
I'm going to take this just in a slightly different direction. And I should say I've done the San Francisco competition twice. I got a lot out of it. It did a lot for my dancing. There's definitely a lot to be gotten out of competitions. The thing that I actually worry more about it, and this just goes in general, just for bringing, again, back to bringing in new people to tango, people who don't know what tango is. When we present authenticity in tango as something that's located not just in Argentina, but in a very specific part of the tango community in Argentina. We acknowledge that, at least, that the style that's valued in the competitions is not the only style that's danced in Argentina, right? It's just one style. I think that fact is really lost on us. And I really worry sometimes that we bring in new dancers and then we tell them, yeah, we'll teach you some tango, but this isn't the real thing. The real thing is over there. It's 7,000 miles away. And the only way to know you'll be doing the real thing is if we hire a bunch of Argentines, white Argentines, to come here, and we'll pay them to judge us and tell us if we're doing the real thing. And I feel like that affects the inclusivity. That just makes us all feel like we're not even really doing it. Like, it's just not real. It's not here. It's not here in LA. And that's what I worry about. I want our students to feel that the tango is alive. It's here in LA. It belongs to them. There's no other way that we're really going to grow our community. So that's really my issue with it. My issue with constantly telling them, like, I'm not even qualified to tell you if you're dancing well. I have to get an Argentine guy who dances a very particular style, as if everyone in 1940 in Argentina danced the same way, right? I mean, how did we decide that this was the style? It's ridiculous. Did you really think that if you got the 10 best dancers in the golden age, that they all danced the same? Let alone now, I mean, it's ridiculous. So that's really more my problem with it. What is authenticity in tango? Why do we think we're getting it from the tiny fraction of the Argentine population that makes its way over here? That's really more my issue with it. And that's where, for me, it intersects with inclusivity. Nicole, what were you going to say?
Yeah, and I want the other Nicole too, but just from an outsider perspective, my question is, and this comes back to my job, and again, and what we do, what is your goal? like we don't need to be talking about whether we need an outsider or this or the tank. Like, what is your goal? Because I'm not talking to all of LA here, but
my goal?
Yeah, and so
my goal is to have the most inclusive possible, and just I've been a part of a couple really great tango communities. They're two of the best tango communities that I've been a part of. I mean, two of the best communities of any kind that I've been a part of. Oxygen was one of them. And yeah, my goal is just to make the community as inclusive and as good as possible. Really, that's the goal.
But the reason I asked that question, and I even, as I said, this is what I do at my job, but even I struggle with it sometimes. There's always someone in the room who's like, what is your goal? Because like, is a tango competition going to achieve that, David? I think you want to think about what you want out of this, right? This, your larger issue, your larger goal, and then think about what you do, whether there are events, how you set up a class, a milonga to get there. Like, if you're looking for inclusion, maybe a competition is not the path. Or maybe it is if it's done differently. Maybe it's a fun event. Maybe it's, but I think you want to think about, like, you have limited time and resources. You have a vision for what you want. Like, ask yourself how you get there, because on the flip side of it, like, the people who are in your community and trying to decide if they're going to come consistently, bring it back to the business world, we talk about return on investment, right? The money that we spend to learn tango, to go to events, is this a good investment? For me, I was like, after a while, I said, no, I've spent all this money. I'm sitting there. I don't feel included. I'm going to see what else is out there, right? And I found something else. I think both parties naturally do that. So you have limited resources, time, whatever. Like, is that competition really a part of what you need to do or want to do to achieve?
Oh, just to be clear, no, we don't hold competitions. We're talking sort of more broadly in the community, what the role of them are, I think.
Yeah. But also, like, you can't control the whole community. So like, there are competitions in Samba too, and it's bullshit. I'm just gonna say, hopefully my friend, who's a lovely person, never sees this. Like, there's a competition in Chicago and everyone's like, you know who's going to win? The youngest actual woman from Brazil who dances decently. Not the best dancer in the room, but the youngest, sexiest. Every once in a while it lines up and it's the right person. But like, we go into this every year, like, and I've been begged to compete. I don't compete because I don't care about competing, but I also know, like, if I fucking get up there, and I'm a good samba dancer, if I'm number one, really legitimately, and someone who just happens to fit the bill for the judge, like, it's on my face. I'm not, one of my friends lost and I was like, oh, she's so gracious, but like, she lost, right? So I think competitions bring in a lot of stuff. I don't think you can control all of LA. You can control what you do, and you can control the environment in your space. And I think over time, people are either going to be like, this stuff out there is not for me, but Oxygen or Atom or whatever, this is really the place that I feel comfortable in. So you solve the inclusion problem by being really intentional about what you do, what you're about, what you talk about, how you treat people, how you even correct the tango asshole in a way that's not going to totally shut down the tango asshole, but make him or her reflect on her behavior and then go out there and be a part of the community. So I wouldn't even spend your time like contemplating.
I think, David, I will help clarify what David is coming from, because I know for them, they really don't pay too much attention onto those particular things. But I know these questions that he has, it resonates with me and it makes sense to me too, which I feel that, David, you're probably figuring out the answers as you go along. And that is, why do we feel that tango is this distant thing that we teach here in LA, and yet for them to receive the authenticity of the dance, they have to travel thousands and thousands of miles to have a better comprehension of it? Or, you know what, actually, let us do a favor for you and bring in someone that can enlighten you, because maybe we can't enlighten you. I have integrated myself into the Argentinian community in a way that gives me an understand. Like, I have two different ways of seeing it. I have this this perception of it where I understand the importance of understanding the Argentinian culture and where it comes from when you are learning this particular dance. And I would expect that from any other dance. When you're going to learn blues, I expect you to understand the root of blues and where it comes from. If you're going to learn swing, whether it's West Coast, Lindy Hop, East Coast, you're going to learn the root of where they came from and when they started to branch off. And it's going to be the same for Argentine tango. So from there, when do we stop and say, okay, now just dance? Or are we going to say, nah, you're never really going to reach that authenticness until you have ... keep paying ... And I feel that a lot of people end up having this struggle within the tango community alone, that they see someone that dances Argentine tango, and it was interesting. I was talking to Adam about this literally today, but he was saying, I find it interesting that someone from Argentina that has only had 2 years experience of dancing Argentine tango can teach a whole community on what Argentine tango is about, when some of us have been studying this for at least 20 years that are not Argentinian, but have like a very deep understanding of the dance because of the amount of time we've spent in it. So there's like this thing, there's definitely this thing that we, you know, keep questioning, okay, how much are we going to pay tribute to certain gurus that maybe are not gurus? Or, you know, I get where you're feeling with that. I get you on that, David. I do feel that there are genuine teachers out there, regardless Argentinian or not. I feel that there are genuine teachers that really dedicate and spend their time into understanding this dance and the history and culture behind it, and then do their best to teach it from a very positive place and help create a community for the better. I also do to see the suppressors of the tango community that want to continue to make other people feel that they don't know what the hell that they're doing, even though that person is trying to do their best. And that I do not condone. I would not like to promote that in my community. I would not want someone to feel like, hey, you don't understand this dance because you don't come from the culture. That would be telling a white person, you don't understand blues because you're not Black. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I hate to, can I give you a contrast? Because I think the problem with tango, you're so in the culture of it, like, please go out and dance something else just for a little bit. Let me give you an example. The woman I talked about in LA, who I think I would love you guys to meet when I come, please come. The first year of the Congress, she brought in the #1 samba guy in Brazil, #1. He's an asshole. He's speaking in Portuguese, even though half the room speaks Portuguese, about the fat lady and this and that, and let's put her in the back. And people are falling over themselves, 100 dancers in the room to be with this guy. Be really intentional about who you bring in. I'm a big believer in, like, samba taught me the respect of the root. So I really have a lot of respect for Brazilians, even the ones who aren't the best dancers per se, because there is something about growing up in the culture and having it. But that doesn't mean that you have to be inferior to it. Like, I am not Brazilian, I'm not pretending to be Brazilian, but I do think I have a deep understanding that continues to grow. I also really care about who I learn from. So like this dude, who by the way insulted me at one point, I don't give a shit about him. I don't do his stuff. And that organizer was like, he's not in the Congress anymore. You know, people from Argentina are trying to make money too and want to come here, and you have selection. There's a lot of talent. Find the teachers who are going to talk about their culture in an inclusive way, and don't bring the divas over. And if you make the mistake, don't invite them back. That's as simple as it. Like, I think everything has to get back to your goals, what you're trying to cultivate, what your brand is. So whether you're talking about a competition, where you're talking about an opportunity for someone to perform in your milonga, whether you're talking about who you're going to bring in, there are amazing people in tango. Bring in the people who are amazing. I loved, you know, I did a lesson with Elisa Pons back in the day. And so when I went to Argentina, I was like, you know what? I really loved the way she treated me at this workshop. So I'm going with my mom, who, by the way, is not a good dancer, but I was very protective of her in that space and her own self-esteem. So I said, let's go to Alicia Pod's. She's like, I just want to sit. Fine. We go to her house. She treats us like we're old friends. Let's have some tea. Let's do this. And my mom just sat back, and then she liked what she saw and the way we were treated. And she said, I want to do a lesson. So we came back and we brought the other people from our group. And it was a wonderful experience, because you have to find the people who treat you like family, who treat you with respect, who say, okay, you're not of my culture, but I love the energy that you're bringing. I love the fact that you study it and take it seriously. Yes, you are a good dancer. That's really how you change the culture. So like, forget about, I understand the pressure, David, of like, do we have the right person to even feel like, you know, they can judge? Like, fuck that. I reject the premise of that whole line of thought, by the way. And there is no bigger competition in the world than probably like a single competition than Rio Carnival. Like, it's huge. And yet the culture still says, this is our community. Whether you're in the wheelchair or you're this little baby, this is our community. And Brazilians, here's what I love about Brazilians, and I really do think, like, get to
Nicole, I hate to cut you off. I'm very conscious we've been on the call for 2 hours.
Sorry. I'm just going to say one thing.
I love all of it.
That loves their culture like Americans do, without any of the arrogance. They want to envelop you in it with love. And so find those people in Argentina, they do exist, who will come to you and wrap their arms around your students and say, you are good, and let me teach you about this, and let me teach you the history. Bring in the right people. Be very intentional of who you work with and who you bring in your space. That's all I'm going to say. Sorry.
Thanks, Nicole. We didn't end in a particularly like final place. There's lots to talk about. I really appreciate everybody's willingness to talk through it. I feel like we really got into it there and made some progress in some ways. We're going to continue talking about it. I'm not quite sure what format that the discussion is going to take next week, but I just really appreciate everybody's willingness to show up and even have the conversation. There were lots of people who were not willing to, and it just says a lot to come here and stick your neck out and talk about something that's potentially awkward, emotional, but is obviously of utmost importance to our community. Thank you. I think we'll just end it there after 120 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody take everybody go to the bathroom. Bye. Thank you, Nicole. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.